Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How to Fast Track New Employee Onboarding in a Hybrid Workplace. So my name is Kelly, and I'm the Senior Content Writer here at ThoughtFarmer, and I am joined today alongside Laura Goodridge. Laura is the Head of People Experience at Essential Accessibility, an innovative platform enabling brands to ensure people of all abilities have equal access to their websites and digital experiences. Laura spent her formative years with the HR team at McLaren Automotive, super cool, building a culture of trust during a time of change, and has influenced corporate culture at organizations like Clear Channel, where she helped embed humility and agility as foundational values driving over 750 employee community. Laura is committed to challenging conventional HR. Her current focus is building cross-functional micro-communities to foster inclusion and enable employee growth. Laura is based in Toronto, where she enjoys spending as much time outdoors as possible with her dog, Billy, who's become an icon among their staff. Laura and I were first introduced by a mutual friend a few months ago. And I have to say that when I first had my call with her, I was amazed at her breadth of knowledge in the onboarding space. So I am very excited to have her here today. And just a quick overview of ThoughtFarmer in case you are not familiar with us. We are an intranet software company, and we help organizations around the world improve their internal communication, collaboration, knowledge share, and as you will discover today, employee onboarding. So just the agenda here today. So I think this topic is something every one of us can relate to. At some point, we've all been that new employee. And I think back to the early days of my career, and it was always chaotic in those first few days. I was usually thrown a bunch of books and binders, meetings with HR. It was all very overwhelming. So fast forward to today, and a lot of that chaos still exists, but we have an added layer of complexity, remote and hybrid workers. But the good news is that we have all the technology necessary to make onboarding better than ever before. And after this webinar, you will also have the wisdom to excel at employee onboarding. So I embarrassingly thought I knew about onboarding. I had had a lot of jobs in my career, and I thought I knew what it should look like. But as you will see in this webinar, successful onboarding is so much more than just access to resources. So we are grateful to have Laura join us today to discuss this important topic. So Laura, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Laura Goodridge. I'm Head of People Experience at Essential Accessibility. Today, I'm going to share my thoughts on onboarding and the importance of it. We're going to cover a couple of different areas around why onboarding matters, what happens when it's done poorly, and also focusing on some of the misconceptions from my personal experience around onboarding. And so focusing on the first topic around why does onboarding matter? It's something that often is the key to people joining, but it really is about setting yourself up for success within this area. And so to me, new hire onboarding is really like the grand opening of something, but it's consistently on repeat. And what I mean by that is some of you may have experienced going to a new restaurant, joining a new gym or workout facility, or going to a new store. And generally you'll be really excited, you'll be curious to see what's inside, kind of thinking about how it makes you feel. Also, who are the people around you at the time? How do they treat you? How are you interacting with others? And really kind of looking at where are the facilities, but also like, are you going to have fun? And this is an exciting experience. And are you really going to have fun going to this new space? And also when you think about like when you've not necessarily had a great experience. So what if you didn't feel welcomed? What if you don't know where the facilities are? You know, you're going to a new workout facility and you don't know where the equipment is that you need. You feel a bit lost. You don't know who to talk to about it or where to go and how to really find things for yourself. And sometimes it's like, what if I make a mistake? Oh, can we just go back a slide? What if I make a mistake while I'm there? As an example, you might walk into a spin class rather than the yoga class that you were looking for. And it really is about the first impressions that you make when you're when you're joining somewhere new. And it's really mainly focusing about how you would then continue that relationship with that experience. And new hire onboarding is really like the grand opening of your company. So who are you? What do you do? How do you treat people? What do you stand for? And just like I mentioned, it really is the first impression that someone new has to your company, and can often be the deciding factor whether they continue that relationship with the company long-term or short-term. So your onboarding should really aim to demonstrate where the person can get their needs met. And if we think about some other tools like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's really bringing that back into play throughout the onboarding, because onboarding really acclimates people to your space, your culture, your philosophies, your people, and also their role. It's the first introduction to their role. And so it really is the first exposure point to the company's intention of setting someone up for success. And I don't just mean in their role. Work is a really big part of a lot of people's life. And so it's really about setting them up for success, but enabling that person to feel valued and to feel included in something that they do every day or most days. Okay, next slide. And so when we think about what happens when it's done poorly, people want to have a sense of success. People want to feel included as part of something, be aligned to a mission or a vision or a team. And so the purpose of onboarding should really be to drive connections between humans, the work that they do, and the output of that work. And I'm sure we've all had these experiences where we've not felt connected to something that we're doing, so we simply stop. Some people think that that's quitting. Personally, for me, I think that's alignment to something that you do or don't want to do in a space that you choose to be in, or you're choosing not to be in. Sometimes we don't feel that we have a choice, but that's a separate conversation. And so new hire onboarding is really the journey through that grand opening, and it does take time. And when we look at when it's done poorly, there are stats out there about some of the most common results of a poor onboarding process. There's no real connection to the company mission, and there's no real understanding of an individual's purpose around that company mission. There could potentially be distance between individuals, or perception of distance between connection with a team. There can be misunderstanding or confusion of duties, responsibilities, accountabilities, and potentially lack of access to knowledge. So not just knowledge in terms of doing your own particular job, but knowledge on how to connect with people, knowledge on how to connect with teams, and maybe a disconnect or lack of access to other people that you may need to work with. Ultimately, the cost of getting it wrong is high. Productivity can really suffer, the overall culture suffers, monetary costs as well, but also the external representation of the business. And so externally, a lot of companies really push for referral programs. And so if somebody's had a negative experience, or they have a perceived negative experience, that can really push out into the market as feedback. And it also can create repeat behaviors for following onboarding. And so when we look at areas of some of the misconceptions of onboarding, if we go to the next slide, there are three main areas that I wanted to focus on today, and this is just my personal opinion. There are a lot of misconceptions around onboarding, but these are the three that really stood out to me when I truly sat and thought about it from my own experience. There's a misconception that onboarding is a one and done process. Your onboarding should be reviewed frequently. And this is something that if you're truly hiring people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all experiences, you're going to want to hear their feedback, and you're going to want to get lots of it. It's really important that you're talking to people about their experience with your process, and to not assume that you're creating experiences that are inclusive to everybody without actually asking everybody. There's a really good comment that from my own company, and it was actually focusing around accessibility, but it's making decisions for someone without someone. And so when you're making a decision to create an onboarding process, it's really about bringing people on that journey to make sure that you're giving the best experience. As an example, we've all probably hurt ourselves as children, and then been told that it doesn't hurt when it does, because it's our experience of that situation. And so people experience things differently. So the more constructive feedback that you have and the more open you are to it, the better chance you have of improving the process over and over. Once new hire onboarding, sorry, tongue twister there, is complete, you're not done. New hire onboarding is the starting point, and then there's continuous onboarding from there. The second misconception for me is that new hire onboarding sits with HR and HR alone. Every single leader, manager, team leader, and individual contributor is involved in the ecosystem of onboarding in some way or another, be it that you're first meeting someone, or you're supporting them with their onboarding, and it's really creating the culture around it. So it involves everybody. HR teams generally own the process and run the sessions, but it truly is a team effort if it's going to be successful. And then the third misconception for me is that new hire onboarding starts on day one. Onboarding is similar to marketing. It really starts at how somebody is interacting with you as a business prior to even thinking about applying for a role. Where are they going on your website? How is the website enticing them to go and look at the careers section? What do they see on the careers section? And so there really is an element of marketing, because it stems from the first interaction that somebody has with your company. So how did they find us? Where are we advertised? How long did it take for them to apply for a role? Once they're in that role, how long does it take for them to find information that they need? So there's a lot of connection between marketing processes and marketing data that can really help you push forward with your onboarding automation. All the steps in the process are part of onboarding. And so it doesn't just start from day one when you do company onboarding. It really is how they are interacting and how do they even find out about the company prior to starting. And so those are just some areas for me that might resonate with you all. If you've got any questions on that, we've got some time for some questions at the end. But I'm going to hand back over to Kelly now to talk about an intranet.
Thank you. It was so interesting. So yes, we're going to talk about why an intranet. But before we do that, we are going to ask you guys, we're going to launch a poll. So if Ben in the back can launch that poll, hopefully it will show up.
Kelly, yeah, just launched it.
Okay. I can't see it, but it should say which scenario most applies to your current situation. We have an onboarding program. It's great. I'm here for new ideas. We have an onboarding program, but it needs some work. Or our onboarding program is in rough shape and information and resources is scattered. So if you can vote on that, we'll give you a few seconds. And Laura, can you read the results yet? No.
Not yet.
Maybe the poll has to be closed first.
Okay, we're at 30 of 36, so I'll end the poll and we should be able to see the breakdown.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, I can see the results here.
So what are they?
Okay, so we have 28%, so that's 8 people out of the 29 who gave us our feedback are sitting in there. We have an onboarding program. It's great. I'm here for new ideas, which is fantastic. So I'm glad to see that some really great onboarding is happening. Second category was our largest category with 52%. So 15 out of 29 people who voted said that we have an onboarding program, but it needs some work. So great. It sounds like you've got some really great foundations. So I'm really hoping you get some good ideas from the session too. And then for the third question, we had 21%, so 6 out of 29. Our onboarding program is in rough shape and information resources is scattered. So it sounds like you have some really great resources already. It's really just about focusing on how we're arranging them. So all great answers, but our biggest one was the program needs a bit of work.
So out of curiosity, Laura, would that breakdown be about what you would think the state of onboarding is for most people?
I think it's a fair spread, just off looking at the data as raw as it is. But I do think from personal experience, everyone seems to have something. And so it's really important that we don't go down an avenue of it's in really rough shape and it's not solvable or fixable.
Right.
And the fact that even if it is in rough shape or you feel that it's in rough shape, that you have resources and you're building on it is really something to focus on, that you've got a foundation. And so generally, I think people, the fact that we have the majority of the votes sitting that they have a program, but they want to improve it is pretty normal. I'd love to see people saying that they've got really great onboarding and they're looking for new inspiration. That's always the case, but I would say this is a fair spread.
Okay, cool, thanks. So back to why an intranet. So as we've discussed the importance of solid employee onboarding, now we want to talk about how to make that happen and the platform you need. And of course, the platform we're going to talk about today is an intranet. So onboarding new employees via your intranet is a good idea for several reasons. So number one, it can help immerse employees into company culture. So an intranet can help new hires get a clear understanding of what the company culture is by showcasing it during the employee onboarding process. So as you will see in a few minutes in my example, it's a great way to immerse employees in your culture. It can improve intranet adoption rates. So by raising awareness and familiarity with your intranet portal, employees will be more likely to repeatedly turn to their intranet to access the information and resources they need to be successful. It can reduce the burden on IT and HR. So by promoting self-help from the initial days, departments like HR and IT will spend less time answering questions through email, which frees up their time. And then speaking of email, it can help reduce reliance on email. So by centralizing communication through your intranet, employees will be less likely to rely on email links where information can quickly become lost or stale. It can also help you track compliance requirements. So an intranet can help organizations and employees electronically track critical certifications and training. So depending on your industry, this could be super relevant. It creates a one-stop shop. So it sets the behavior in new hires that the intranet is the central source of truth they can rely on for all company information and news. And finally, it benefits remote and hybrid workers. So it takes a dedicated effort to set up remote workers with technology and equipment to collect all their paperwork and to make sure that they instantly feel connected and valued by their team. An intranet makes this easy by creating a self-guided, online centralized hub of information and access to assistance when needed. So now we're going to look at an example of an onboarding hub. Okay. So this is a mock ThoughtFarmer instance here. So this would be the home page. And we're going to get into exactly or potentially how an onboarding portal could look. But before I start poking around, I just want to highlight that this is merely a rough guide. Our product is extremely customizable. So almost every single thing you see here can be altered or modified. Colors can be changed. Blocks of text can be moved around. So this is just a sample. So this is a home page here. So the first thing I see is this banner up here. And it says, follow the link to your onboarding space. So here's my onboarding space. So this banner here, I'm just going to click. This is what we call, we've made this required reading. So this just means that when I click the confirm button, that my manager or HR team will receive a message that I reviewed and understand everything on this page. So this is actually my favorite feature because I used to be an internal comms professional. So we understand the importance of having proof that employees have read certain things. just going to hit confirm. And so here we have a welcome note from our CTO. We even have a little video. And so I think the idea here is that we're trying to make this page as human as possible. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bookmark this page. And so every single time I go to the intranet, I can see there's my onboarding space right there. So when I scroll down, there's instructions on how to use this page. So as you can see, I just bookmarked it. So now we're going to look at some of the tasks. So day one tasks, complete your profile. So usually what would happen is a manager or someone would sort of pre-populate this to get you started. So as you can see, profile strength is 75%. I could see all my information is added so far. Let's see if I can try to find a way to jump that up to a higher percentage. Maybe I add a language. Yes, and it's bumped up my profile strength to 83%. Another day one task could be reading an employee handbook. So we've also made this required reading. So I would confirm when I have read it. And this is all just your important HR stuff, the stuff that used to be in binders and loose pieces of paper, things about payroll, time tracking, vacations, stuff like that. Another big thing we always know happens in the beginning of work is all the forms that have to be completed. So there could be benefits forms, maybe you have to order equipment, computer stuff, technology, or maybe just need to order business cards. And so here I would put all my information in. You could even add an image if needed. And then there's design options. So all of this is through an online form builder in ThoughtFarmer called FormFlow. And then we've got a Meet Your Buddy. So I won't get into the importance of a Meet Your Buddy. That's another conversation, but it's a cool thing to do to have an onboarding partner. And so I've learned that I've got a buddy named Elijah, and we're going to have a meeting and he's going to talk me through a few things about the company. So maybe I want to learn more about him. So I'm going to click his profile and I can see everything I need to know about Elijah. I can even view where he is in the org charts. If I want to understand who he is and his role in the company, I can see, I can also see myself in the org chart as well. And then we've got a section of useful links. And again, this is all customizable, so whatever would be useful to your organization. You could put, perhaps your first 30 days on the job and what each day could potentially entail. This is one of my favorite things. We have this at our intranet at ThoughtFarmer. It's called I Knew Where Is Everything, and it is super useful. Information about security and alarms, even office dress code. Everything you need to know is easy here. And then we've also got a calendar on the left here. So it tells me any meetings and events I have upcoming. So I know that I've got the meeting with my buddy. Looks like I've also got a meeting with the IT team. Also have a team lunch. And I can RSVP for the team lunch here. And then I can also put any dietary requirements I have. And then finally, we created a section called downtime. So if your employees want to spend some time in their downtime, just maybe looking at the social media, some fun facts, or any sort of forums. So that's basically the onboarding space. So yeah, I will send it back to Laura for tips on success.
Thank you. Really great to see that in full swing. So my tips for success is really to think about the journey that you actually want to take people on, and create a process that allows them the independence to follow that journey. And this links back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier around the marketing opportunity that you have here. A lot of pressure that comes from onboarding is, how do I get myself up to speed as soon as possible so that I can feel useful? And so that's really driven from a place of people wanting independence as quickly as possible, and to be seen as being independent, capable, and all the other things that people want to feel when they join a new role. So think about your journey and actually what you want it to feel like, and how you're enabling that feeling to come to fruition. Second is to be patient with yourself and your employees. This really is a collaborative process. Not only are the individuals going through it, your employees are going through that journey, and it's new, it's exciting, a lot of learning of new systems, new tools, new way of working, new cultures, new people, everything's new. And it's okay that someone or people may take different amounts of time to get through onboarding, but also be patient with yourself. This is a work in progress. It continuously changes, and just because we have one way of doing it doesn't mean that it won't iterate and we won't develop on it. So it goes back to my point of, it's not a one and done job. You can have the foundations of onboarding, but you're going to want to continue to iterate it. So be patient with yourself. If you're doing it right in terms of getting feedback, then you'll get more and more ideas from other people. It goes into my next point around getting feedback. It's really important that you're honest and you allow a space for employees to be honest about what they actually experienced. We can create process, and we can go through it from a knowing perspective of where we should go next. But it really is about asking somebody who's completely fresh to the process, who's never gone through an algorithm before, or has never gone through the journey before, to really see how it made them feel. Not just did they get the task done, but actually how it made them feel. And also my last tip is to keep it fun. As I mentioned before, we spend a lot of time at work, and it's really important that we enjoy what we do as much as we can, and so keep it fun. Maybe that's imagery for you, maybe that's the language that you use, maybe it's events that you run. There's lots of ideas that you can generate around keeping it fun and what fun means to your culture. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing. The poll suggests that there's some really great work being done out there. I hope you've had some good ideas from this session, even on automation and how you can use tools and systems to support a really great journey. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Kelly.
Thanks. So the final section we're going to get into is measuring success. All of this technology is great, but we know that you need to prove that your onboarding program works. So there are definitely a few ways that you can measure success. Laura just touched on feedback. That's something that we do as well. We recommend running a survey because, of course, the greatest indicator for a successful onboarding program are the new hires themselves. So many employers make this an official part of the onboarding process and ask new hires to fill out a survey at the end of their orientation or at other significant points during their tenure. It's an excellent opportunity to identify what's working and what isn't. So questions you could ask are, do you have a clear idea of what is expected of you at this job? Is the job what you expected it to be? Do you feel like you have all the tools and resources to perform your job successfully? And what did you like or dislike about the onboarding process? Another way to measure the success is by looking at employee turnover. So if you have employees running away from your organization in their first year, you likely have some challenges. And if retention rates are high, that's a solid indicator that you've got a well-structured, successful onboarding program. But again, this could be determined through feedback via a survey where an employee is asked to provide information and feedback on why they left, or this conversation could be included in an exit interview. So don't be afraid to ask questions like, could we have done more to support you in your first 30 days? Obviously, this would be more applicable to employees who had departed within, let's say, a year of starting. I think if you had been on the job for 10 years, you might not remember your onboarding. And then finally, I want to look at intranet analytics. So I showed the example earlier of a potential onboarding instance. So you can actually look in ThoughtFarmer, we've got intranet analytics. You can actually see what employees are looking at. So are they actively participating in discussions? Are they commenting and liking your intranet content? So high intranet engagement reveals a lot more than just whether or not your employees understand how to use the internet. It also demonstrates a commitment to communication and collaboration and a willingness to be involved in active discussions. And all of this can be easily tracked through your intranet analytics by looking at metrics like likes, shares, and comments, or even video views. So we just finished a white paper ebook. I can't remember what we're calling it these days. So watch for this in your email inbox. We will be sending everyone who attended the webinar a copy of this. And now we're going to get to some questions. So I understand that our chat feature isn't working. I don't know if our Q&A feature is working.
Hey, Kelly.
Yeah.
So for everybody, what we'll do for the Q&A, if you do have a question you'd like to ask Kelly or Laura, please, if you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom, it should be in the Zoom window at the very bottom, you'll see raise hand. What we'll do, I'll be able to see if anybody has their hand raised. I can then enable your audio so you can ask the question, and then we'll make sure that we get to everybody's question.
Thanks, Ben. I knew there would be a technology glitch by running a webinar during Mercury retrograde. One thing I did quickly want to say is, I know somebody had asked me this question internally, how long did it take to set up the onboarding instance that I demoed today? And I had asked our designer internally to set it up. And so I went back to him and asked him how long it took. And he said about 30 minutes. So that should give you an idea of how long it could take.
So we don't have, oh, looks like we have one hand raised.
Okay.
Great, we'll pass it to Julie. So Julie, I've enabled your audio. You may need to just make sure your microphone's set up, and then you can ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Kelly and Laura, thanks for all that information. I was just curious if you had thoughts on onboarding or maybe like re-onboarding, reboarding for people coming back from leave. I personally recently came back from my second mat leave. And I have to say, my first mat leave, I came back before pre-pandemic, we were all in the office. And it's been a wildly different, and I have to say more negative experience coming back in the pandemic. And just sort of feel, not in the pandemic, sorry, but now that we're in like remote work, and feel very sort of forgotten about. And so I'm just curious if, if your companies have any thoughts towards how you would nurture someone that is not new to the company, but has been away for some time, whether it's a mat leave or a parental leave or a medical leave, whatever it might have been.
Great question. Laura, I'll leave that in your hands.
Thank you. That's a really, really great question, and a really important one, particularly in a remote working environment. I think from my experience, re-onboarding is just as important as initial onboarding, but it needs to be handled differently. Unless the company has gone through a change in that time, and also depending on the amount of time that's taken off. And so let's take an example of maternity leave ranging from 3 months all the way through to here in Canada, you can take up to 18. And so lots can happen in 3 months, and also even more can happen in 18 months. And so I do think that there needs to be a separate re-onboarding process that may not include so much on the history of the company, but should include things like updates of what's happened during their time away, and any potential changes to their role. And that can include things like changing systems, responsibilities have moved across teams, maybe the company uses the RACI model for accountability, and understanding how that would fit, because ultimately a period of time has been spent away, not focused on the company, not focused on work. So expectations might have also changed from the business perspective. And so there's an element of re-education and re-knowledge sharing of items that may have changed during that time. And so I would always recommend that there is a secondary re-onboarding process. Ours, for instance, is actually run by our managers, because we really focus on three things. Are there any updates from the business, like large scale updates? As an example, from personal experience, right now we're in the middle of a merger, and so we also have somebody on a maternity leave. So big thing for me is, how do we update them on large scale changes? Secondly is the reintroduction to their role, because the role responsibilities have changed. The role's still there, but the responsibilities have evened out because we've grown. And then thirdly is reintroducing them to former colleagues, new colleagues, and how you're setting them up to be able to interact. So that could be Slack Donut Connect as an opportunity. Are we setting them up for success that way? So overall, yes, I do think it should be separate. Secondly, yes, I do think it should be done, but it really needs to be thoughtful and based on the company's situation at the time. So I hope that helps, Julie. I'm sorry that you had not a great experience. The pushing of in-person where possible, but also thinking about how you can create connection, and it could be through an automated system of how you connect people, but giving cues to set up great conversations. So are there automatic icebreakers set up? Are people's Slack profiles, for example, set up with information about that person? So you can get creative that way, so you don't walk into a meet and greet not knowing anything about that person.
Thank you so much. That's so helpful.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Laura. And thanks, Julie, for that question. That was super interesting. I never really considered that scenario, but I guess it's a very common one. Ben, do you know if we have any other questions?
I don't see any other hands raised. So does anybody else have a question or a follow-up that they'd like to ask?
I mean, if not, or if they want to reach out separately, you can always reach out to us on our website at thoughtfarmer.com. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar, as well as some information I think that we discussed. I'll make sure that I leave Laura's contact information as well, so if you want to connect with her. But otherwise, thanks to everyone for attending. Thank you so much to Laura for her wisdom and expertise. Super valuable, super interesting. I learned a ton, and I hope our audience did too. I'm sure they did. So thanks, everybody.